because I was a teenager who knew it all. I I don't need any wisdom. But I eventually did.
Today on Time We Discuss, I have Chris Loper with me. Chris, thank you for joining me.
Hey, you're welcome. Happy to be here.
All right. So, Chris, you are a private tutor. This is cool. I've never spoken to someone that does any private tutoring before. So I'm very anxious, very excited to talk to you. What's a typical day like for you as a private tutor?
Well, I don't start work until the kids get out of school. So I have my whole day free until about 3 o'clock. And so during the winter, that means I can go skiing during the middle of the week. When it's nicer here in early fall or in late spring, I can go hiking or biking or kayaking during the day. But I also use my daytime for writing and other projects and habit coaching. So it affords me a lot of flexibility as long as I'm willing to accept the weird hours. It's sort of like a restaurant schedule. It's kind of like, it's basically the same hours I had when I was a bartender.
How do you feel about that?
I like it. I'm used to it because it lets me do things I want to do during the day and lets me use my brain for creative work during the day, which is, like if you work a 9 to 5, it's pretty hard to like do that at 6 in the morning or do it at 6 at night when you're tired. So I have many hours to work on projects before I do my actual work.
How did this path even come to be for you?
I was a ski bum living in the mountains, waiting tables and bartending, and I got injured, broke my foot, so I could no longer work on my feet, and I couldn't play in the mountains, so I moved to the city and grew up, and I didn't really have a career plan. Like I had gone to college and studied sociology and history, which for anyone who knows anything about that is like, well, that's useless. Like, I mean, you can go to grad school and do things that lead to some kind of career or a professorship. I didn't do that. So I really didn't have any kind of backup plan. And I was like, well, dang, I was good at school and I do like teaching. I had done some various types of teaching over the years. And so I tried to become a tutor and ended up really liking it.
When you first got started as a tutor,
Mm-hmm.
how did you get your first pupil? How'd you get your first student?
Yeah, I got hired to work at a really great company in Seattle called Northwest Educational Services, where they have like an office and kids from all over North Seattle come into the office to work with tutors. We would have like 6 or 7 tutors at once working in this kind of small space. So um, they got me my clients. Um, and it was such an awesome place to start out because I didn't know what I was doing. Like I knew most of the stuff I was teaching, or I could, but if I didn't know something, I could ask one of my coworkers, be like, hey, this is a really weird math problem. What do we do? Or like, I don't understand this chemistry concept. Like, help, you know? And so there was always that help. And there was a lot of like guidance on just like how to be a good tutor. The owner is sort of like a Jedi Knight of tutoring. He'll just wave his hand at a troubled teenager and be like, these are not the study methods you're looking for. And, you so I learned a lot from him. And then during the pandemic, everything went to Zoom, which I did not like. Zoom tutoring is rough if you have to do it all day. It's okay to do a little bit, but like full-time Zoom tutoring is brutal. So I cut my hours to like a break-even amount of money, and we moved to the suburbs. And I started my own business in the neighborhood here. So as we came out of the pandemic, when we went back to in-person tutoring, I was doing my own thing here in my little neighborhood.
When I first realized you were a private tutor, I assumed that your whole history was you as an entrepreneur. And it didn't even
Yeah.
occur to me, and it makes sense, but it didn't even occur to me that you could have started at like a facility with other tutors, like a so let's talk about you as actually as the private tutor and
Yeah.
starting your own business.
Mhm.
Coming out of the pandemic, what was that like trying to establish yourself as a private tutor?
Slow for the first year because nobody knew I was existed. Like there's a Facebook group for the neighborhood, and so if someone chimed in there saying like, "Hey, I'm looking for a tutor," like I would respond, and that worked a little bit. I had like campaign style signs that advertised South Cove tutoring, and I'd throw them up like at the roundabout, at the entrance to the neighborhood, and like if the city would come by and pull them, every few weeks, and you're like, whatever, not getting in trouble. And eventually, after I had a handful of clients, like word of mouth spread, and for the last 3 years, like my business has just been at capacity for almost the entire school year, and I maintain like a wait list of people. It's been really successful, but I had to be patient. And the beauty of tutoring is like it's kind of one at a time. So I was still working for Northwest Educational Services on Zoom, and I would pick up a client in the neighborhood and then drop a client with them, and pick up a client in the neighborhood and drop another client with them, and just kind of like Indiana Jones swapped my way from being an employee to being self-employed.
So you talked before about working the school year with the kids.
Yeah.
Do you get any work over the summer, or is it that just everyone is away for the summer and you don't see them again until the fall? What's that like?
I get a lot less in the summer, which is great because my wife's a teacher. So we both sort of have summers off. She really does, and I end up working like 10 hours a week. Summertime affords a little more open scheduling, so I can support different kinds of projects. Like with my old boss from Northwest Educational Services, we co-teach a series of classes for parents on like parenting for academic success.
Before you mentioned that you went to school for sociology and history,
Mm-hmm.
okay, did not go to school for education. Did that create any kind of roadblocks for you as far as like credibility goes, where it's like I've never taught in my, I mean, you said you did, but as far as like professionally in a traditional school setting, you didn't teach. Did that hinder you at all when trying to be a tutor or get students? What was that like?
Sometimes people are surprised that you don't have like a background in teaching or whatever subject you are tutoring, but there's really no expectation that you were like a classroom teacher or have a master's in education in the world of tutoring. You need to know your stuff, like whatever it is you're tutoring. And it's also really helpful if you have some background in psychology and like the neuroscience of learning. And that's all stuff I studied on my own because I was just curious about it. Like in my 20s, I read lots of psychology and dug into neuroscience. Um, and so that stuff gets incorporated into my work, like so I can guide students towards better study techniques and problem solving methods.
That's good. I was going to actually ask you about that. So when you were studying psychology on your own, was that through like a community college? Was that through like an online learning platform, or was it just books? Like if someone wants to follow your footsteps, like what kind of path did you take to learn the psychology stuff?
First place I would go is a Coursera course that's free called Learning How to Learn. It's actually the most popular Coursera ever. Um, so it's really good. It's from Dr. Barbara Oakley. She's also got some books that are good. It's all about just how we learn, and also like how to overcome procrastination, why exercise is good for learning. So that's an awesome place to start. For the last 10 years, I've been writing an education blog for Northwest Educational Services, where I take a lot of like what I know and put it into short form articles. So that's a good place for people to explore if they want to like learn like what study techniques work and how to communicate them with kids. Because like a lot of what I do communicating is like I'm not teaching like hard neuroscience. It's kind of like cartoonized, or like I personify your brain to make it make sense.
So when you first started out, you were working at Northwest, and I'm assuming they kind of tailor to your strengths. If you're really good at math, it's like, okay, we all do tutor people in math or whatever.
Yeah.
How has that changed for you as a private tutor? Did you just initially start out saying, I tutor math, or you just kind of like, I'll tutor, these are these things I'm good at. I'm just going to see who I can get. How did that work out for you initially?
So most tutors are content focused and they're like, well, I only do like math and physics, or they're like, I only do history and language arts. And it's kind of like those two worlds like rarely overlap. Um, I am unique in that world, or rare, because I am have expertise in almost all academic subjects you would do in high school, like except for like coding, because if I knew how to code, I'd have a different job. You know. Um, so uh, many of my clients are looking for just math or just Spanish or just writing, but another like half of them are like, we like that you can do anything because he needs help in all of the above. And it changes from week to week. And so if you're going to try to do this professionally, whether at a company or on your own, the more subjects you can cover, the easier it is you're going to have a time finding full-time work.
Now, what kind of trends are you seeing? Are you seeing that most of your people are math and science, or is it really kind of all over the place?
Math is the most common thing people ask for, and the pandemic definitely made this worse because they didn't learn as much as they should have, and then we advanced everyone forward, and the old curriculum didn't change, but everyone now had way more knowledge gaps. So moving forward is tough. And so coming out of that, and we went back to in-person school, there was just like a flood of requests for Algebra 2 because everyone who took Algebra 1 on Zoom just didn't really learn it. The other big category of things that students struggle with, we call executive function, which is organization, productivity, overcoming procrastination, remembering stuff, getting it done and turned in on time, not getting sucked into your smartphone instead of, doing your work. That whole category of struggle is a huge deal and a big part of my business.
If someone's looking to enter the world of private tutoring, how important is it for them to start out at some kind of tutoring facility, kind of like how you initially started, as opposed to just starting on their own and trying to get students and the credibility, through word of mouth? How important is it starting at like an established facility first?
It will be very helpful to do that because of the guidance you'll get and the experience you'll get. Like if when I worked there during the school year, I would see 50, 60 students a week during the school year. And so I got in tons of practice. Right now, because I work for myself, I only have to see about 30 a week, to make like the same money. But and so in addition to getting lots of reps, much faster, you also get like top-down guidance from like basically mentorship from more experienced tutors. So when you have like trouble with a student, they're like, oh yeah, I've seen this kind of thing before, and they can coach you through like how to handle it.
You mentioned that you have about 30 students.
Mhm.
Okay. Which in my head, it's like, that is a lot for nights and weekends. How long is a tutoring session? How long does it typically last? Are they 30-minute sessions, an hour session? What does that look like?
50 minutes, 50 is what I do, which
Okay.
is like a sweet spot where you can get a lot done, but they don't get too drained or unfocused.
What is your most popular time that they seem to request a lot? Do they want the weekends? Are they looking for like Monday, Wednesday? Is it all over the place? What does that look like?
I work Sunday through Thursday. So the after school hours are real popular Monday through Thursday. Nobody wants to do tutoring on Friday unless they're desperate. And I also don't want to work on Friday, so that's good synergy. Same thing with Saturday. Nobody wants it on Saturday because it's, a fun day. And Sundays are super popular. Like I work like a 12-hour day on Sunday because that's the day you get your homework done or you study for the Monday test. you know.
so so now traditionally I think of tutoring as people struggling with a concept. Okay, so do
Yeah.
you ever help them with their study habits as well? Like they have this big test coming up on Monday and they need help with the studying of it. Do tutors ever get involved with that, or is it more of
I
like,
do, yeah.
okay,
Yeah. So it's not like, well, I know, I was like, let's say we need to learn, this topic in Spanish, like there's vocabulary and there's grammar, and they they know what they have to learn. Like they have a packet of notes that tells you what the words mean and how the verbs conjugate, but they don't actually know what to do to get it in their head and then to be
Gotcha.
able to remember it. So we'll do a session of what we call active studying, where it's like, yeah, no, we're not just going to read it over. We're going to write it. And then I'm going to test you on it without looking at the notes to convince your brain that you actually have to remember it.
I'm assuming you see the students just once a week, or do you see them more than that?
Most common things once a week. I got a handful that I see twice a week.
Okay. And are they typically a short term? So it's like, and I'm thinking in my head, this is probably going to vary. You're probably going to mix, but do you get people they're there for just like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then they got the concept and that's all they need help with, and they're moving on? And then do you have other people that are there kind of like most weeks out of the year? What does that typically look like for you?
The vast majority of my clients see me every week for the whole school year, and even then for multiple school years.
If someone is looking for tutoring help in German, we'll say, and you don't speak German, do you have a network that you can guide them to go see someone else that would be a better fit? What's that
Yeah.
community like for you as a private tutor?
Yeah, there are a couple of folks here in Issaquah that I will refer to, and they refer back to me. And then I send lots of people to Northwest Educational Services because they have like a 10, 12 person crew with a variety of subjects they can do. It's important as a tutor to just to be completely honest about what you do and do not know. Um, so it's like I'm not going to offer, Japanese tutoring because I don't know Japanese. If you want to have a strategy session about like how to learn effectively, I could talk to you about studying Japanese for like one session and then like take it and run with it. But I don't know anything. Um, but I might know somebody who does that. So happy to do a referral.
Okay, okay. Now, Chris, let me ask you this one. I was speaking with a magician probably a couple months ago at this point. And I like to ask this question sometimes. But what I said to him, I said, I have a very strong tech background. So,
Okay.
being in my family, if someone had any problems remotely related to technology, I was the guy.
Hmm.
So I asked him about, well, when you're at parties and stuff, they ask you to pull out the magic tricks and stuff
Yeah,
like
sure.
that.
Yeah.
So my
Yeah.
question for you, how often do you get roped into being like the family tutor, either for your kids or your nieces, nephews,
Yeah.
cousins' kids, friends' kids? Like, how often does that sort of thing happen for you?
Most of my friends' kids are really young, so that has not happened yet, but it's probably coming. It's more happened with my friends themselves who are like retooling for a new career, and they're like, I have to take this class, and it's been 20 years since I learned anything, and I don't know how. Please help. You know?
So that leads me to the next question. Do you typically also tutor college age students, or are you more like elementary, middle, high school?
Vast majority I have is middle school, high school. I do a little bit of college, um, and a little bit of elementary. And like my youngest this year was like a 5-year-old learning how to read, and my oldest this year is like a college junior. Occasionally hits me up to work on essays.
Chris, one thing I'd like to do when I'm talking to my guests, I like to throw a random question at them. Usually
Sure.
has nothing to do with what they do for a living. It's usually very entertaining, at least for me it is. So your surprise question for today. Throughout our lives, we receive a lot of gifts. It could be for a birthday, holiday, or someone simply expressing gratitude. Now, the types of gifts can also vary. Maybe it's a book, a membership of some kind, or in rare circumstances, even a car. So looking back over the course of your life, what is one gift that you were totally shocked to have received?
When I graduated from high school, my aunt Cindy gifted me um, some books of wisdom, which I did not expect, and uh, wasn't really mentally ready for at the time, because I was a teenager who knew it all. I don't need any wisdom, sure. But I eventually did read them, and they were really eye-opening, and consuming daily wisdom has become like an important part of my daily routine, that is just extremely helpful to feed my brain good ideas every morning.
That's awesome. I love that story. That's good stuff.
Mm.
Chris, one other thing I like to do when I'm speaking with someone, I like to give them the opportunity um, to talk about a project they're working on, a cause they believe in, if you want to talk more about your business. But I like to give the person I'm speaking with the opportunity to talk about one of those things. So if there's something you'd like to discuss, the floor is yours.
So, your audience is people exploring different careers. And so that's probably people who might be thinking, they're trying to find a career, or maybe thinking about switching careers. And it just so happens, like, I wrote an article several years ago about using the Ikigai diagram to find a fulfilling career, and it has more backstory on like how I got into where I am now, and I think it's something your audience would really like. So I would like to share that with them. We can put a link in the show notes or something, but it's becomingbetter.org/ikigai.
That would be awesome. I love that. I would be more than happy to include that in the show notes. I'll put that on the website as well so people can easily find that. I think that is a huge asset. So I'm very, very happy to share that.
Thanks.
Chris, it's been absolutely awesome speaking with you today on Time We Discuss, and we learned what it's like to be a private tutor.
Yeah.